Hello everybody, we are back with another Spirit Island tier list. Okay, so today we are doing the major powers, which is probably the most enjoyable thing to do a tier list for. So we have S, which will be the most powerful, F, which will be the worst. Let's get it going. Okay, Winds of Rust and Atrophy. So I'm not going to read all these cards specifically, but hopefully you can see them well enough on the screen, or that you're just familiar with them. It's cheap, it's fast, which is good. It's not too hard to hit. But generally, I don't really ever grab this card, so I would actually say this is C tier. It's not horrible, but what it does isn't important enough for me to want to do it, I would say. Okay, Unrelenting Growth. This is the Massive Proliferation card. It has a bunch of symbols on it. It's pretty hard to threshold with pretty much anybody, but it's a very good card even if you don't threshold it. And it essentially opens up the game for everyone. So I think for now we're going to put that in A tier. Yeah, I don't think it's in S tier because in general it's not a good late game card. Unless you can threshold it, I would say. And it's somewhat expensive, so not even every spirit could play it when they get it. Unleash a Torrent of the Self's Own Essence. This card is really cool. I'm actually pretty much always pumped when I see this card. I like the options, and it's super easy to threshold. It's super cheap. It feels like you're playing a minor power card as far as the cost. And it can give you tons of energy, and or you could do some damage. I would say this one is A tier as well. Hope that this is a good way to show them, just so we don't run out of room. Okay, Volcanic Eruption. This card's crazy. Costs 8. It's, in general, hardcore overkill. If you can threshold it, I think it's awesome. But theoretically, you're adding a ton of blight. Yeah, it's just crazy how much blight you could theoretically be adding into what you would be doing. And it's so expensive that it'd be really hard for anybody to play. But the people that can, I think it'd be a really cool card. But in general, I would say, I think we're going to put this in C tier. Because it's so expensive that almost no one can play it. But the effect is actually really strong, so it doesn't belong in F. Okay, Sea Monsters. This is the one that was reworked because it was too good, essentially, because there wasn't a limit on the fear you could get. It's funny because it only has 2 elements and it costs 5, so you would think this card wouldn't be that good, but it can do an immense amount of damage, and more than that, it can get you a ton of fear, and you can theoretically repeat it, which is just crazy. I think this one definitely belongs in S tier. This is a lot of the... I think how you can tell if a major is good or not is if you can't threshold it, is the ability still good? And in this one, in this case, I would say yes, the ability is still good enough for you to be able to play that card even if you can't threshold it. Yeah. Okay, Flocking Red Talons. This is one of the new ones, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Yep, this card is just going to go in B tier. It's cheap, it gives you a ton of elements, it's not super hard to threshold. All of those things are great. It has a huge range, except that you have to have presence in water, which shouldn't stop that many spirits. But the problem is, even when you get it off, I don't feel like it does enough. But it's so cheap and it gives you good elements, so I think we're going to leave it in B. Okay, Dream of the Untouched Land. This is the one where you can theoretically add another board and then do some proliferation stuff as well. This is a really cool card. It gives you a ton of elements, but it costs 6. It's so good, though, if you can ever get it off, even though it's massively hard to get it off. But I think we're going to put it in B. Because I would, if I could ever play this card and threshold it, I would always want to do that. Just a question if you can. Pent Up Calamity. This one is a 5-element card, super cheap card, and it can do a lot for you. It's also pretty easy to threshold. I don't know that I can put this in S tier, but I think I can put it in A tier. Because a lot of the spirits don't use... So if you use the top ability, it's not very good. If you use the bottom ability, it is very good. But essentially you would either have to already have a bunch of tokens out there, or first you threshold it and add a bunch of tokens, then next turn you do it and do a ton of damage. So because it requires some build up, I don't think it belongs in S. Weave together the fabric of place. This is a really cool one that I find often does very little unless it does a ton, which I know is a funny way to word it. But in general, this card really doesn't do that much, and it can even cause you some problems. I believe that you can lose to England if you combine two, and then together the two of them have 7 or more. I can't remember what the number is exactly. But I believe this can lose you the game, so there's some matchups where it's just not very helpful at all. And if you can remove people, it's helpful, but I think it belongs... You know what? I think I'm going to put it in C, actually. Maybe that's crazy, but I think that's where it belongs. The effect isn't really good enough unless you can threshold it to be able to do it. The Wounded Wild turns on its assailants. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think this one is going to be a C as well. I know it's theoretically good, but often there aren't that many beasts to use. It has to be in a land with blight. You get to add these, which are great. But it's not the easiest thing to threshold. If you can threshold it, it would be a lot higher. But if you can't, I don't think it's worth the 4 energy to do something slow and theoretically only do 5 or 5-ish damage. Indomitable Claim. This is one where you get the proliferation effect, and then it's pretty easy to threshold, and you can essentially make them do nothing in that land, or you can either defend it, or you can defend it for 20, theoretically. I think this belongs in S tier. Yep, I think this one belongs in S tier. I believe that's correct. Okay, Infinite Vitality. It's funny, this card I think came out before Vitality was a thing. I know that this card is theoretically good. I don't find that I ever really want to play it, and even with the defending spirits, often they're better off just defending. Maybe that's not true. I feel like this is often a redundant effect. If you can threshold it, I feel like it can be really nice, but I feel like it's often a redundant effect. I'm actually going to put this in C tier because it just happens to be a card that I don't get much value out of. Okay, Grant Hatred a Ravenous Form. I think this is our first F tier one. Gives you 2 elements, it's slow, it costs 4, hard to threshold, just not a very good card. Dissolve the Bonds of Kinship. This is going to be another one that falls in the same category and pretty much for all the same reasons. Infestation of Venomous Spiders. I like this one a lot. It's not too hard to threshold. It's a little bit expensive, but honestly, probably for what it does, it's not too expensive. I wouldn't say this is A tier, though. I think we're going to leave it in B. And to be fair, some of the other things I put in A, B, S. This one, essentially, if it is good, it's still in B. And it has to be really good to get higher. Focus Land's Anguish. This is a card that I've actually been able to use pretty well sometimes. But honestly, I think it's an F. If I got this card most of the time, I would not be very happy to be spending 5 energy to get 5 fear and do some damage, because I assume you're going to kill something. And it's not going to help you threshold anything else that you have, so I just don't think it's the move most of the time. Okay, Forest of Living Obsidian. This is actually one that I consider a really good card, because pretty much you don't even need to threshold this, and you can pretty much clear an entire land. Everybody has a spirit sight. You have to use it at your spirit sight, but if you do, you essentially get to do 2 damage to every invader, and then 1 damage extra because of the bad lands, move some Dahan around, and that's before you even threshold it. If you threshold it, you can destroy even more. I believe you can destroy another land. I think this one is going to go in A, and it also has 4 symbols and costs 4, and it's slow, but it's literally just a land clear. Super, super good. Death falls gently from open blossoms. I don't think I would say this one is very good. Yeah, this one's just not very good. I can't put it in F because it does something, but it doesn't. No, honestly, this one does belong in F. It's just too bad. It's restricted on where you can target. It's 4 energy to do 4 damage and theoretically add something. And then if you threshold it, you get additional stuff, but it's just so bad. Entwined Power. Yeah, even though this one is super cheap, it has some elements and it's fast, I just feel like this card I have maybe played once and never thresholded. It's just not a card that I want, and I don't feel like it's very good at all. I'm going to put this in F tier. If you can get the energy, if you can threshold this, this becomes a good card. But it's not very easy to threshold, so I believe that's where it belongs. Voice of Command. This is a really good card. Not hard threshold at all. Do a bunch of damage and can essentially just like turn the tide. It's a little bit restricted in where it goes due to the Dahan, but the effect requires Dahan anyway, so it makes sense. I'm tempted to put this in S tier, but I think I'm just going to go with A because I don't find myself claiming it all the time or being able to use it perfectly all the time, which is what S would be. Unlock the Gates of Deepest Power. This is one that every single time I see this card, I always try to see if I can make it work. The answer is often no, but if anyone at the table can help me out, we always make it work because it's worth the sacrifice. I don't think I could put this one in A, but I do think it belongs in B just because it gives you every single symbol. If you do the top effect, it's not very good in my opinion. But if you can threshold the bottom one, it's massive and it's just going to change the whole game for you. Okay, Plague ships sail to distant ports. This is one of the new cards as well. I love this card. It's like super specific, but what it does is just so cool. It's not hard to threshold at all. I literally think any spirit could threshold this card because it just requires 3 elements in addition to what it already has. And you can pay to remove fear cards. It's just so cool. I think this one is going to belong in A tier. Storm Swath. I really like this card actually. But maybe that's just because I play Lightning a lot and this is like the perfect card for him. But really it doesn't do enough unless you threshold it. But again, it's not very hard to threshold it. So I think that this is going to belong in B. If you can get this to be thresholded, it definitely goes up. But unfortunately, the effect isn't really good enough if you can't threshold it. Okay, this one is just straight going here. Just a horrible card. Doesn't do much at all. Flow like water, reach like air. This is another one that unfortunately every single time I see it, just like Entwined Power, I am just sad that it was one of the ones I drew. It is going to go up here again. It doesn't do enough for when you're looking for a major. You're not looking for a card that does almost nothing. You're looking for one that can win you the game or close to it. Vigor of the Breaking Dawn. This one is absolutely S tier. This card, Dahana is one of the best ways to do damage in the game, period, through events and through counterattack. But when you can weaponize them with a major power, it's absolutely worth it. And this is so easy to threshold. And so if you can just do the effect, it's still really, really good. It's 3 energy for a fast 6 or more damage often. And if you can threshold it, you can do 6 damage to that land, push 2 of them into different lands, and then do damage based on the Dahan in those lands. Just such a good card. Manifest Incarnation. This card looks like it wants to be really good, but it's just not really good. Unfortunately, I think it belongs in C tier. I love what it's trying to do, but it's somewhat restricted on where it can be. I love how much fear you get, but it's a drawback that they have to ravage unless you were able to plan for that, which I would assume you would be able to. If you can threshold it, it's even better, but it already costs 6. So needing to meet a lot of requirements to make it good isn't really worth it. Okay, transform to a Murderous Darkness. Unfortunately, this is going to go to F tier as well. Yeah. Maybe that card is better than I give it credit for, but it's just so expensive that almost no one can play it. And in general, you don't want to be destroying your presence because that's another way that you often would lose the game. So it's just too painful. Cleansing Floods, 5 cost, do 4 damage, which is horrible. Remove a blight, which is good. If you threshold this, it's significantly better. It's actually awesome. It's literally so much better. But there's only so many spirits that can threshold this to begin with. I think, I know it seems crazy, but I think I'm going to put this one in C. Sorry, Ocean. Okay, Accelerated Ra. This is, yeah. I think this might be the best card that I'm putting in F tier, but I do believe that this belongs in F tier. It's harder to threshold in this one. You do the same amount of damage, but you're more limited on what you can target. You get a little bit more fear, but you can't remove the blight. And it will, unfortunately, it will happen that sometimes when we will play this card, we'll get to the point where someone can threshold it, and then there's just happens to not be a lot in the jungle or water, so the extra damage is wasted, or the blight removal is wasted. It's a lot better to have a versatile effect like this. Okay, Settle into Hunting Grounds. Unfortunately, this one is going to go in F tier as well. I know it sounds crazy that I'm putting so many of these in F, but there are certain spirits you can do a lot with this, but for most spirits, this does just absolutely nothing, and they're not going to be able to threshold it. Yeah, so it's just not the move. Okay, Smothering Infestation. Yeah. You know what? Because this one, I was going to put this in F as well, but because it's so easy to threshold, I think this one belongs in C. It's not a great card, but it's certainly the move sometimes. Okay, Bargain of Power and Protection. Yeah, this is another one that every single time it comes up, I always look to see if I can do it. Not because the defend effect ends up being helpful most of the time, just because it's awesome to be able to proliferate again and again and again. And then the defend is a an added bonus. It's super cheap, which is awesome, gives you a ton of symbols, which is awesome, and it's not very hard to threshold. It's not super hard to threshold. And then if you can use it and to defend more, that's massively helpful. So I think this one is going to go in A. Yeah, it's just a great card. Okay, Tigers Hunting. Yeah, yep. I think, honestly, I hadn't ever used this card much. But I knew that it was a good card, I guess. But I realized how good of a card it was when I played it recently. So A tier for sure. It's 2 cost. You can theoretically do a ton of damage in multiple different locations. Pretty crazy. Okay, Instrument of Their Own Ruin. This one is pretty hard to threshold, which is the only problem. There a while ago I would have put this in A. Now I think I'm gonna put it in B because if you can't threshold it, it doesn't do that much often unless you already have a blight in a land. But theoretically, if you got to the point where you just added this and then did the damage, essentially you're only doing 3 damage and adding, Strife, not blight. So, Melt Earth into Quicksand. This one actually opens itself up to a lot of options. It's somewhat hard to threshold. It's actually probably pretty hard to threshold. Yeah, it's so interesting. So I do play a lot of spirits that can threshold this somewhat easily. So for me, it's probably higher. Honestly, you know what? I'm just going to leave it in B. It's pretty versatile. Because you get to isolate the land, because you get to destroy things that are moved into there, which is super helpful. You get a tiny bit of fear, you do a tiny bit of damage. And yes, you're limited in the land you can target, but if you move anything in there, then those things get destroyed. So there's multiple ways to do the damage. Pyroclastic Flow. Not super hard to threshold. Yeah, not super hard to threshold. I do like this card. I think we're just going to put it in B. Fast damage is always good. It doesn't do a ton of damage and it can theoretically have a drawback, but it's not very hard to threshold. It's not very expensive. Gives you some symbols. Terrifying Nightmares. Some fear, push some people, maybe even more fear. I think this one's going to be B as well. It's always one that I consider. If I can threshold it, I will always grab this. But I guess that's one general rule. Most of the major powers, if you can threshold them, you will go for anyways. So, Inspire the Release of Stolen Lands. So this card is just so good. I think we've played this one a lot in the last month or so, and we've been able to threshold it a few of those times. But even if you can't threshold it, it's so good. You stall out a little bit on the fear, but it absolutely belongs in S tier. Look, 2 range, you just can't target a land with blight, but if you threshold it, you can target a land with blight. It's just crazy. This one is another of, I guess that last one was one of the new cards. All the new cards are just awesome. Replace 1 blight with a wilds, which is awesome because the blight goes back to the card. You get something good, you do some damage and get some fear, and then it's actually pretty easy to threshold. I have also played this one a decent amount in the last month, and I've been able to threshold it very often. I even played a game of Starlight and built a comp around this, and it was super strong. Essentially, you just play this and threshold it every single turn. Yes. So that one, oh man, I don't know if I can put it all the way in S. I think maybe it belongs in A tier. This is actually a really tough question. No, I think we're gonna put it in S tier. I know that's probably the craziest opinion I've had so far, but I do believe that belongs there. Utter Curse of Dread and Bone. This card is so bad. Not super hard to threshold, super hard to use. Or super hard to... just not very good. Okay, Twisted Flowers, Murmur Ultimatums. This is another card that I just really like. It's expensive, gives you a lot of elements though. It's not super easy to threshold. But often when you are going for major powers, you will already be at Terror level 2 or higher. So you can theoretically remove 2 invaders, add a Strife, and get Fear. I definitely think that this one is A tier. And it can still allow you to do your innate powers because it has so many elements. So, and that's even without thresholding. If you threshold it, you get more Fear and then do some damage. Okay, Transformative Sacrifice. This is the one where someone removes some of their presence and then gets a bunch of minor powers and plays them immediately. Yeah, yep. This one I'm actually gonna put in S tier as well. There's some games that you'll have a spirit that you feel somewhat stuck. You feel like you feel like you're just gonna get stuck in a reclaim loop or something like this. This is like instantly gets you out of your reclaim loop. It's not very expensive, and yes, you have to remove some presence. But the fact that you could play 4 additional cards, and again, this one's not very hard to threshold, but I believe you have to threshold it before you take those cards. I have to look that one up, but I consider this a very, very good card. Trees Radiate Celestial Brilliance. Yeah, I really don't like this card, actually. I think it belongs in B tier because it does get you some fear and it does something, but you're somewhat restricted in the lands that you target. Yeah, it's just not my favorite card, but for what it does, it is worth it. Exaltation of Incandescent Sky. There we go. Yeah, this card is crazy. It's probably one of the hardest ones to threshold in the entire game. But it costs 7, so most people aren't going to be playing it to begin with. But what it does is just crazy. 2 people can play additional cards, 2 people can do things fast, and you each get to do 3 damage. That's without even thresholding it. Yeah. And then if you threshold it, this ability is just crazy. I don't think that I can put it in S or A just because it's too expensive, but I will put it in B because if you can ever afford this, you don't even need to be able to threshold it, and the effect that it has is just 100% worth doing. Draw Towards a Consuming Void. This one is just going to go straight to A tier. This is one of the ones that pretty much anyone can threshold without even having to do really anything. Yeah, this card is just so good. It costs 8, which means that a lot of people won't ever be able to play it. But if you can play it, you don't need to play any other cards. You don't want to play any other cards, but essentially you can just do it twice and destroy an entire board. So it's just ridiculous. Fire and Flood. Now this is one where you can theoretically do a ton of damage. It's not super hard to threshold either of those parts. And that's great. But unfortunately, it's too expensive for there's a set amount of help that this can get you. If you don't threshold it, it gets you 8 damage, which is not worth 7 energy. If you do threshold it, it gets you 16 damage, which is worth it. But it's only in specific lands, and I don't consider it good enough. Bloodrack Plague, this one. Yeah, I always consider this one as well, but I just don't think it's very good. I think it's going to go in C. It can be really helpful, and there are actually games that I've used. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever thresholded this card, but there's games that I've just used the first ability, and it's been very, very helpful and gotten me out of a big predicament. But Poisoned Land, I think this one's going to go right to B tier. I really like this card, except for the fact that, well, it totally makes sense, so I'm very happy with how it works. I don't like that you have to add the Blight, but so because of that, this isn't a major that you play over and over and over and over again, unless you can somehow Blight heal. The land thrashes in Furious Pain. Yeah, this one just doesn't do enough to make it worth it. It's going to go right down to F, unfortunately. Blazing Renewal. This one... yeah, it's somewhat hard to threshold. Pretty expensive. Unfortunately, this 2 damage to each town or city in that land is somewhat helpful, but it doesn't actually kill any of the cities. So I'm actually going to put this one in C. Sweep into the sea. Very easy to threshold. You get to push a lot of things or destroy a lot of things, but you can't do cities with this. But again, I said it's not very hard to threshold. I think this one just belongs in B. Bargain of Coursing Paths. This is another one that has the proliferation effect, which is awesome. Yeah, this one's probably... this one I think I'm going to put in A. Yeah, I haven't been able to use this card a lot, but I do believe it's very good. Okay, Rumbling Earthquakes. Yeah, this is probably just like one of the biggest damage dealing cards in the game. It costs 6, which is very expensive, but you ignore health bonuses, you get a bunch of fear, and then you can destroy a bunch of towns and cities. And if you threshold it, which is possible, not easy, but possible, you can do even more damage. And this one doesn't just target one land, it targets like a bunch of lands, or one land and then a bunch of lands adjacent to it. Man, I'm really tempted. I actually think I will. I'm going to put this one in S tier, because this one can get you out of such horrible situations, and there's actually a lot of spirits that can threshold this one. And even if you can't, the base effect is so good to be able to do 12 damage and get a bunch of fear. Okay, Angry Bears. Yeah, I think this one belongs in C. It's not very hard to threshold, which is great, but the effect I just don't consider good enough. Okay, Paralyzing Fright. This one is super easy to threshold, get a lot of fear, and you get to skip actions. I think this one goes all the way to S. It doesn't give you a ton of elements, but it's not very expensive, and most people can threshold that. Talons of Lightning. This one's actually not very hard to threshold either, but it costs 6 energy. Sometimes this can get you out of a pickle, but often it's just too expensive for what it can do. If you threshold it, it's awesome, but I know it might actually seem crazy, but I'm going to put this one in C. I love this card, but that's mainly because I play a lot of spirits that can threshold it. But in general, paying 6 energy for 3 fear and 5 damage is just not worth it. And it's limited in where you can target. Tsunami, love this card. Super easy to threshold. You have to destroy some Dahan, but often if you're playing a 6-cost major, you don't really care if you lose Dahan because it's pretty close to the end of the game, or you don't mind too much of these. And then theoretically, you can hit all the coastal lands on that board if you threshold it. This one's going to go in A tier. Vengeance of the Dead. Yeah, this one's actually not very hard to threshold at all. But I think this is one of the ones that might actually need to be reworked. This one's F tier. Insatiable Hunger of the Swarms. The only bad thing about this one is that it adds Blight. But then you do so much that this card absolutely pays off. You can add beasts, gather beasts, do a bunch of damage, get a bunch of fear. You have to kill some Dahan maybe. It's not the easiest one to threshold, but it's certainly possible. I don't think I can put this in A because there's a drawback to it, or a somewhat significant drawback to it, but I do believe it belongs in B. Power Storm. Yeah, this is always one that whenever I get it, I always consider how helpful it will be. If you can ever threshold it, it's always the right move unless you're playing a single player game and you just don't have a ton of card plays. I think this one's going to go to A tier. Yep. Thickets erupt with every touch of breeze. Yeah. It might seem crazy, but I'm actually going to put this one in C tier. It's not very hard to threshold at all, but often all you can do is the 2 damage, and that just isn't enough. It has to be an inland land. And you could do one of those effects, but it's just not worth it in my opinion. Fragments of Yesteryear. Yeah, this card... It's so tough that this one costs 7. I'm sure you can manipulate this card so much by playing a big game and pushing everybody into one spot, doing a bunch of other stuff or whatever. But the problem is that you remove all the pieces, so you don't get any fear, and you essentially don't progress in the game except that you got rid of people. And it costs 7, it doesn't give you many elements, so it's pretty difficult. Cast Down into the Briny Deep. This card is awesome. I have played against I've played 6/6 adversary games, but I don't do it a ton. I know this card is super good into them. This card is so cool. It's not worth it if you are just doing the first effect, but if you can do the bottom effect, it's crazy. I think I'm gonna put it in B because it's either horrible and not helpful at all, or it's the only thing that can win you the game. So I think there's no correct category, so the average would be that. Sleep and Never Waken. Yeah, this one's really good against certain adversaries, so because of that... No, I'm actually going to put this in C. It's good against certain adversaries, but it's not super easy to threshold, and if you don't threshold it, it does pretty much nothing. And it's somewhat restricted on where you're from, so. Struggling Firevine. Yeah, this one's not very hard to threshold, and it's actually just a pretty cool card. I think this one's going to stay in B tier as well. Hope everything's still nice and visible. Okay, Spill Bitterness into the Earth. This one can be very helpful. I also feel like it cannot. I always think this one costs 6, but it only costs 5. Because it only costs 5, I think that I'm going to put this in B tier as well. We'll just add that over there. Wall of Rock and Thorn. Honestly, this one has gotten me out of a decent amount of pickles, and it's so easy to threshold that pretty much everybody can do it. It does a lot of effects too. You do damage, you defend, you add wilds, which helps you in the future. You isolate, which is very helpful as well. It's slightly limited on where you are, but considering that it's so easy to threshold, I think we just gotta leave this one in B. Okay, Unearth a Beast of Wrathful Stone. I love this card. Often I don't even threshold this. It's not the easiest thing in the world to threshold. If you do, it's even better. But this card is just so good. It's somewhat limited in where you can hit, but you know in advance whether you're going to be able to use it this turn or not. Or whether you're going to be able to activate it, quote unquote. But you can get so much fear and do so much damage for 5 energy. It's just ridiculous. And then afterwards you get to do a little bit more stuff. So, the Jungle Hungers. Yeah, very easy to threshold. And really powerful whether you... I don't know if I would say whether you threshold it or not. It can be very effective. Unfortunately, it destroys Dahan. I think this one's going to go with B. It's so cheap, and there's certain people that would just love this all the time, but not everybody. Okay, Bombard with Boulders and Stinging Seeds. Yeah, this one... It's so funny that they say range 2 from these 2 specific lands. Almost everybody is in one of those 2 lands, so just a funny requirement to me. Pretty easy to threshold, not too easy, but pretty easy. If you don't threshold it, it's not awesome. But if you do, it's pretty solid. Especially for only costing 2. I think we're going to leave this one in B. Okay, Pillars of Living Flame. This one is unfortunately just going to go to F tier. It's decently hard to threshold, especially given that you only get 1 element for it, so it's not going to let you do anything with your innates. It has a drawback, it just doesn't do enough damage. Irresistible Call. I always really like this card. Not that I always use it, but if you can play it, there's so many, because it costs 6 or whatever, but there's so many things that this can do for you if you can pull it off, even if you can't threshold it. So seeing this card always gives me like an option instead of them ravaging in a bunch of places and building in a bunch of places. You can just gather a ton of stuff into one land and have one massive problem. But I do believe it's C tier just because it doesn't actually do much for you. Yeah. Solidify Echoes of Majesty Past. This card I love. I believe this is one of the new cards as well. Yeah. There's so many games I've played with Bringer of Dreams and Nightmare where he will use this card, regain the 1 that lets him gain a major power, play it to gain a major power, play that card. There's just so many ridiculous combos that can happen. Like I remember there was one turn I was playing this card, or one game, this card, and then I got to reclaim the other card. So it's just, this card is awesome. It's not, and it's so easy to threshold. So I'd say A tier for sure. Wrap the Wings of Sunlight. Yeah, I totally understand why someone would think that this card is really good, and I don't even know that I would say they're wrong. Unfortunately, it's just not the one that I want to use very often. You have to be in wherever... you have to be in a spot with a bunch of Dahan. It's not very hard to threshold, so it's easier to get the Dahan there. but then all they do is you can defend it slightly, but if you're not defending it for enough, the Dahan are going to die there anyways. I know it might sound crazy, but I'm actually going to put this in C tier. Okay, Savage Transformation. Very easy to threshold. If you don't threshold it, the ability doesn't do much for you. But I'm going to leave it in B just because it's so cheap and it's not very hard to threshold, so often you will be thresholding it, and turning a bunch of Explorers into a bunch of Beasts often pays off a ton. Okay, Vanish softly away, forgotten by all. I love this card. Yeah, I love this card. I know it might sound crazy, but I actually don't think it's very hard to threshold this card. I feel like there's a lot of cards that lead to the thresholding of this card. Because there's a lot of Feather Moon cards. And if you can threshold it, it's just ridiculous. You know what? No, I think I will put this in B though. Even though I think it's so good, and it has certainly won some games for me, it doesn't get you a bunch of fear, and sometimes removing isn't enough. Okay, the trees and stones speak of war. Very easy to threshold, very inexpensive, fast, do some damage, and defend. Personally, I wouldn't put this one in S tier. I would put it in A tier. Because if you... Maybe that's wrong, but essentially it requires some setup before in order for the... in order for the effect to be really, really helpful. So, I would say that's my tier list, guys. So, it's actually very interesting. We have a ton in B, a decent amount in both of these, but then I actually have a decent amount in F. I feel like there's a lot of just bad major powers, so it's always risky to go for them. But there's actually a lot in S as well, and I didn't necessarily expect that all of these would end up here. But it's cool to see which ones do. So, thanks for watching, everybody.